Hello everyone and welcome back to Fly From Home. It's Cat Enthusiast Man here with another Microsoft Flight Simulator product review video. A little bit different to what I usually do though, because I'm not actually looking at anything new this episode, if you would. It's a re-review, a look back at all the products which I reviewed over the past couple of years of this channel being in existence, and asking the question whether they actually are still any good. Any of you who've been following this channel for a while knows that we've been doing these review vids for quite a long time, and there's quite a lot of products out there that we've reviewed. If you have a look at our playlists, aircraft review playlist, there's quite a lot of videos on there. And some of those products I really liked, some of those products not so much. So what I've basically done is go out and fly it around in the current iteration of Microsoft Flight Simulator to see whether those reviews still hold water in Sim Update 10 and beyond. All of you who are familiar with Microsoft Flight Simulator know that it is a constantly growing and evolving game, and fundamental things like the flight model, propeller physics, all of these kinds of things are constantly changing and hopefully getting better. So that's great, but the downside is obviously developers of aircraft, such as this one on the screen right now, the Cessna 414 by Flysimware, have to constantly keep updating and upgrading their aircraft to match the changes of the simulator. So that can be a real challenge for developers. I know for a fact that some developers have actually just given up trying to keep up with these changes for now until the game enters a more stable state. Other developers, such as Flysimware, for example, constantly bring out updates and a very, very rapid update cycle to keep the quality of the products extremely high and fresh for all the customers out there. And I mean, well, you can make up your own mind about which of those two approaches I think is better. But without further ado, I'm going to get into the video. Now, this is a slightly different format to what these videos usually take. Normally, I record myself as I'm flying along, and you get the live bumbly audio from me not really knowing what to say and all the rest of it, and then I'm sure it has a charm all of its own. But this time I'm going to be recording stuff in post, in editing, so it's going to have a slightly different sound and feel to it. I just thought it would work better for the nature of these videos. And well, let me know below what you think of it, and whether you want me to carry on with this style, or to just keep with the live commentary. I'll probably keep with the live commentary for most of the product review flights and all the rest of it, but may do a little bit more post commentary if it works out all right. Right, without further ado, let's crack on. Right, so the first aircraft that I've got to re-review for you here is the Piper Seminole by good old Carenado. Now, this was the first in-depth product review that I did. Certainly the first product review full stop on the channel was the Carenado Mooney that Jimbo did. This was my first in-depth product review, and at the time it was decent enough. The general conclusion I came to was it looked great, it sounded okay, the performance was a bit silly, and the handling was a little bit too light. Now, coming back to this aeroplane a long time after I last flew it, because to be honest, it's not really been out of the hangar since I did the review flight on it. It was actually quite a pleasant surprise. This aeroplane has actually had a few updates since that review came out, and also I think it's just kind of improved with the simulator, unlike a lot of add-ons which have become worse. Spoiler alert. This one's actually quite pleasantly improved. The performance is now actually in line with shut up gear warning point, is actually in line with what the book figures say that this aircraft should be able to achieve. See, it still looks nice. Those distinctive nose lights shining forwards there. Yeah, so it's actually performing, as you can see there, getting just over 1,000 feet per minute in a V-wide climb. It's actually performing around about where it should be. And we can see we're going for a V-wide climb at absolute max power now. You get about 2,000 feet a minute, which again, you know, in a light aeroplane, there's not a lot of fuel on board here. I've set it up with one pilot. This is what you'd expect from an aircraft like this. So that's a big improvement, really. Back in the original review video, it was It's about 2,500, almost 3,000 feet per minute, which was obviously quite absurd. There's very few piston engines twins that can achieve that sort of performance. Certainly the Seminole can't. So it's nice to see that this thing has picked up a lot. Little flight that I did here, I just took off from, surprise, surprise, Doncaster, and did a little trip out into the local area and then back again. You can see just trying out the handling. It feels a lot less twitchy than it used to do. So whatever Carenado's done to this thing, it's had a really good effect on both the handling characteristics of the aircraft and also the accuracy of its performance, which means, I mean, probably I'm going to say this aeroplane is more of a recommendation now than it was when that review came out. Also, you've got the 750 integration, which we didn't have at the time because the 750 didn't exist. So it's really nice to have a good, reliable GPS system to integrate with this aircraft, which is pretty handy. Other than that, the inside of the airplane hasn't really changed too much. Sounds haven't changed too much either, and yeah, the sounds aren't amazing. Some of the Carenado airplanes sound very good, some of them a little bit less so. This is kind of one of those that's a little bit lacking in the sound department. But it's certainly not bad, it's horrendous. The autopilot's default Microsoft Flight Simulator autopilot, but that's had a lot of improvements, so that's improved as well. So really it's just a case of the sim has improved, and this has kind of improved with it. You can see here the new Sim Update 10 turbulence effects hitting me as I'm coming down final approach here, and this is actually riding those turbulence effects quite nicely actually. It's quite reasonably strong crosswind if I remember rightly when I was recording this flight. So we've got quite a lot of wind from the left. You can see me doing quite a bad job of tracking the centre line, but you should be used to that by now. What I should be doing is crabbing the nose to the left a little bit, and you can see me starting to do that now. A little bit low on the approach, but that's fine because with VFR we're aiming for the numbers, not for the touchdown markers. So it's a common misconception that you should always be 2 whites, 2 reds. No, when you're VFR, you can afford to drop down a little bit below that and really aim it to smack it on the numbers. Not that it's enormously important at Doncaster, but it's a 3-kilometre long runway. So just allow you to watch the remainder of this approach. Can't remember if this was a good one or not. It's probably a bad one, to be fair, given most of mine are. You can see I took the carb heat off just above 300 feet. It's a standard procedure that my school teaches for carburetted aircraft, just to make sure you get that extra performance. And a low altitude go around gives you one less thing to think about. This is the Addon Doncaster scenery, by the way. Very much recommend picking this up if you like flying from Doncaster in Microsoft Flight Sim. It's very, very good. A few things not quite accurate, but for the most part, spot on. Terminal's very, very good. Air traffic control tower's about right. Just a few discrepancies with some of the hangars. Just pulling the power and letting it sink on, mostly on the centre line. Come on, you can do it. Oh, look at that. Absolute greaser. Very much out of character for me. Now, so what we're going to do here is it's a multi-engine aeroplane, so I'm going to have a go at the single-engine handling. Now, this is one of the things that I really praised it for on the original review video. Its single-engine handling was really, really good. Unfortunately, when I recorded this, I was experiencing a bit of a bug with my control bindings. Originally, I thought it was some sort of bug with the aeroplane. There's the engine failure. But actually, I think it's probably my problem on my end, so I'm not going to blame the aeroplane for it. I wasn't able to get the aeroplane to feather its prop for whatever reason, and I think it's something to do with my honeycomb settings. So here's me doing the engine failure after takeoff drill. So the drill is power up, gear up, flap up, go up. Make sure you're in the right configuration. You control the aircraft first, obviously, then run that little drill. Then confirm which engine is failed by reducing the power on the one you suspect has failed to idle, checking for any change in sound or yaw on the aeroplane, and then feathering the affected prop. And as you can see, the affected prop has decided not to feather. It's just it's reduced in RPM, but it's still going around there windmilling. In reality, this would be producing an enormous amount of drag on on the left-hand side of the aeroplane on the side of the failed engine, and causing us a lot of performance issues. But it does seem that although the animation isn't there, the animation for the stopping prop isn't there, the performance is, because it's performing pretty much as it should do. I'm just going to fly a little asymmetric circuit here to demonstrate that the aeroplane handles properly on one engine. See me just setting it up on quite a close-in base leg. This was before the NVIDIA driver update, by the way, so you can see quite a few little micro freezes and stuff. I think I was testing out DLSS at various stages, so some of these clips may have DLSS on, some not. So see if you can spot the difference. Turning base to final here, the technique really is to add drag to the aircraft rather than make aggressive changes in power. But because I'm a bit rubbish, having to pull quite a lot of power out here to get the aeroplane down. I'm quite high. I mean, height and speed is not a bad thing when you're asymmetric, especially if you've got a very long runway in front of you. Wait until we're below about 300 feet above ground level before we take the final stage of flaps. Just hear them coming in there. That's our asymmetric committal altitude. If we do commit to land, we can now no longer go around. So the chap who sang the "You Can Always Go Around" song was lying out of his teeth. Let's see what this looks like. Ooh, not as good as the first one. Missed the centre line. But yeah, the Carenado Piper Seminole, definitely, oh look, now the prop's stopping, definitely more of a recommendation than it was when I first reviewed it. This is actually quite nice. The downside of it is the Seminole's quite a boring aeroplane in my opinion. It's not turbocharged, it's not pressurized, it's very basic, it's a Piper Arrow with 2 engines. I mean, if that floats your boat, then yeah, I can recommend picking this up. It's a cool little touring aeroplane, and if you're wanting to practice a little bit of multi-engine training, then it's not a bad idea. Okay, so now we've got something which I'm sure a lot of you are going to be very interested in, because it's an enormously popular aircraft in the simulator. You can see me just demonstrating the fact that the fuel pressure gauge isn't working how it should do in there. Anyway, I'll talk about that in a second. This is the Just Flight Piper Arrow 3. Now this is still our most viewed video on the channel, so I'm sure a lot of you are here in the first place just because I made this particular review video. Back in the time when I made this video, I was flying the Arrow on a very, very regular basis. I was taking it out almost every day. I still fly it pretty regularly these days, although not quite as much. I'm more in the DA42 these days. I enjoyed this thing an awful lot when it first came out. It was absolutely fantastic. It was the first really properly done, in-depth aeroplane from Microsoft Flight Simulator. And given that it's an aeroplane which I fly quite a lot in real life, I was really, really taken in by this. It handled very nicely compared to everything else in the sim at the time. It had loads of systems depth. It had all the electrics model. It had a wear model. It had a failure model. It had loads of different options for the radios. It was brilliant, and the sounds are fantastic. And obviously, all of those things are still true, aside from a couple. Now, you could see me kind of pointing around with the mouse at the start of this clip. And what I was trying to show is that the fuel pressure should actually be tied to just putting the fuel pump on. So when you pop the fuel pump on, the fuel pressure should rise. It shouldn't have anything to do with the throttle position. However, the throttle position, for some reason, is tied to the fuel pressure. So when you're messing around with the fuel pressure, when you're messing around with the throttle, the fuel pressure goes around. And you can see I'm still dealing with that crosswind. It's changed a little bit, so we've changed onto runway 20 now. You can see me really struggling to keep the airplane on the centre line. That is not great. The Arrow is quite an easy airplane to fly in real life. It's quite stable. And it kind of looked like I was dealing with a 40 knot crosswind there. It's certainly not that bad. It's probably about sort of 15 knots. It's certainly within the crosswind limitation of the aircraft. Now, in terms of performance, the airplane still performs pretty much how it should do in real life. I didn't actually get all the books out and everything to check this one, but like I said, I've got a huge amount of experience in these airplanes. I've can't remember exactly how many hours, but it's certainly in the region of about 500 hours I've got flying various different types of arrows, sorry. So about 1,000 feet per minute, 25 in the climb with gear up and flaps up. Absolutely what you'd expect. Arrow 3 slightly better climb performance than the Arrow 2, slightly worse cruise performance. It's a little bit of a trade-off. Now, down to the nitty-gritty. All of those cool things that I said about this aeroplane still apply, apart from the handling. Now, this is a little bit of a subjective thing, I guess, but you can see it kind of just oscillating up and down here in the slightly rough conditions I've got in the simulator here with real-world weather sat. And this is not something that was there when I first reviewed this. When I first reviewed it, it had lovely, stable handling, just like the real aeroplane did. It did a fantastic job of mirroring what the real aeroplane does. Now, it feels a bit odd, honestly. It's certainly not improved with the Microsoft Flight Simulator physics and aerodynamics changes that have been made. So, as a result, it feels a lot more twitchy, and it does this kind of weird nodding dog thing, where it goes through turbulence and it kind of pitches up and down like it's going over a rough road or something. It kind of feels like a Land Rover on a rough track. If you kind of get what I mean there. It's certainly not quite as nice as it used to be. The performance is still, like I said, the performance is still there. All of the other cool stuff, the sounds are still amazing. All the circuit breakers and wear and all the rest of that cool stuff is still present and correct. But this has not had an update for a very, very long time. I can't. Well, I'll hunt down an exact date and I'll put it on the screen now. But this hasn't had an update for really quite a long time. So it's kind of showing its age almost, which is sad, because this was Just Flight's first product in Microsoft Flight Sim, and it made a really big impact when it first hit, because it was such a big upgrade over all of the. See me trying to get the alternate air there and completely being unable because the click spot for the fuel flow is a little bit too big. Yeah, so this made a huge splash when it first hit Microsoft Flight Sim, because it was the first aeroplane to be simulated in any kind of depth. And you can hear that sound, that whistling noise from the outside. That is so good. That's just what the real thing does. If you ever sit and you listen to an Arrow, I mean, to be fair, other PA-28s do this as well, but really particularly the Arrow. If you sit by a GA runway and you listen to Arrows and Warriors and stuff coming into land, they make that kind of whistly noise. It's just air going over the airframe and through the flaps and the gear and stuff. That's so good. And the lights, the strobe lights look brilliant, the nav lights look brilliant, the beacon on the top looks brilliant. You can see me having a real struggle here to deal with this crosswind in the aircraft. This is what I was saying, the handling just doesn't feel quite right anymore, which is sad, because it was such a great aeroplane. I did spend a lot of time flying this around when it first came out. Kind of let it fall by the wayside for a while now, and it's because of stuff like this that it's kind of fallen out of favour with me. I know a lot of people still watch my Arrow review and they're like, oh yeah, fantastic, let's buy this. So I thought it was definitely worth me coming back to look at this and say, look, it's not as good as it was back then anymore. Now, that is not to say that it won't. You see me kind of all over the place. Now, this, obviously, you know, I'm bad at Flight Simulator, so me wobbling all over the place there is, you know, obviously part of it is a skill issue, but also part of it is the airplane just doesn't handle quite right anymore. It's sad, really, and I'm absolutely sure that Just Flight will at some point address this and sort it out, and the airplane will go back to being fantastic. Okay, now here we are with another Carenado product. This one is the Turbo Cessna 182. Now this is, if any of you were around for the very start of Microsoft Flight Simulator, this is one of the 2 add-on aeroplanes which launched on the day that the simulator launched. It's actually came out to milk that money as soon as the simulator dropped, and honestly, you know, you can kind of tell that. It was never a enormously in-depth airplane. The performance was alright, I suppose. The handling certainly wasn't particularly amazing, and it just used a lot of Microsoft Flight Simulator default assets. Now, that said, all of those things are still true, but all of those Microsoft Flight Simulator default assets have improved a lot. So this airplane has, I guess, improved a lot with those default assets. Nothing to do really with Carenado. I really don't think this has had that many updates, to be fair. Maybe one or two. So it really kind of feels the same. You can see this strange attitude that it kind of sits at the ground. The real 182 does sit sort of nose high on the ground. It does kind of... You do struggle to see over the panel a little bit, but this does seem kind of too much, and I'm constantly having to change my seating position just so I can see over the front of the airplane. I have to hoik my seat up and down using the arrow keys. I'm just pulling onto the runway here. See the very varied conditions that I've got in all of these clips, because I did film it over the space of a few days. This is a good departure, because as you can see straight ahead of us we've got an A320 which has landed on runway 02. So now I'm about to play chicken with it, which is obviously exactly what you'd do in real life. Away we go. So the sounds of this airplane on the outside are actually quite good. On the inside it kind of sounds like a lawnmower. So not Carenado's finest work in the sound recording department, I fear. But everything's working as it should, and we've now got the lovely working title G1000 at our disposal, so obviously that is a hell of a lot better than the G1000's iteration that this aircraft first launched with. It looks amazing, as all Carenado aeroplanes do. Unfortunately, they still haven't addressed the issue of the airplane still needs leaning out as you climb. As if any of you know an awful lot about airplanes or turbocharged airplanes, you'll know that turbocharged aircraft don't need any kind of leaning until they pass their critical altitude. I suspect the critical altitude for this airplane is around about 10 or 12,000 feet, something like that. But if you want to get up to that sort of altitude, you have to constantly lean the airplane out as if it was a normally aspirated, carburetted airplane, which of course it isn't. It's a fuel-injected, turbocharged one. The only airplane that models that sort of behaviour correctly, by the way, is the Cessna 414, which of course we'll get onto in a little bit. Handling's okay though, seems to be riding the bumps quite nicely, unlike the poor old Just Flight Arrow, which bumps all over the place, quite a weird fashion. See that synthetic vision on the PFD, very cool. Never had the pleasure of flying an aeroplane with that spec as an option. Be quite cool to see. See what kind of landing I can pull off here. Oh, look at that. Not actually that bad. There we go. And have a little bit of a swerve on the taxiway for good measure once we've touched down. So yeah, didn't expect an awful lot from this airplane when it first came out. And as long as you don't expect the world from it now, it's still pretty decent. Okay, so now we've got an aeroplane which I really enjoyed when it first came out, and I still enjoy it. It's still something that I fly semi-regularly. It's the Carenado Seneca 5. Now, this is... I'm kind of biased because this is one of my favourite GA aeroplanes in real life. I really like the look of this thing. It's very cool. High-performance piston twin, two big 6-cylinder engines, turbocharged, and oxygen in the cabin, weather radar, all these other cool things. And when this first came out, this was really the first airplane to feature its own little weather radar display and all that kind of stuff. So this was a real jump in quality, really, from the Carenado aircraft that we'd seen previously in Microsoft Flight Sim. So it was very cool to see. And this was an airplane which I flew around a lot myself, just for fun. I actually filmed a second video on this thing, just doing an IFR flight, just to show off the characteristics of this thing and the cruise and all the rest of it. Here I am trying to turn the lights on, obviously a very complicated task for someone as smooth-brained as I. So how does it fly and handle in Microsoft Flight Simulator post Sim Update 10? Well, I mean, pretty much the same as it always did. It's good. It's got a decent amount of inertia. It performs on the numbers. Now, obviously, it had one large issue when I reviewed it, and that was mostly the single engine handling, but we'll get onto that in a second. I'll just allow the video to play out so you can see It still does handle like it should do, but there we go. I'm remembering my weather radar and a few other bits. At the very last second, here I am trying not to overboost the engines. Now I don't know if in the real aircraft it would be that easy to overboost the engines, because they are fitted with a modern wastegate, so that should stop that being too much of an issue. But I'm willing to take any kind of advice from any real Seneca pilots out there who can tell me if the Seneca 5 does still overboost. You can see the climb performance is really good, which is just what you'd expect from this aeroplane in real life. It's well known in the GA community for being a bit of a rocket ship. I love the DA-42 that we fly, but I certainly would not say no to a go in one of these things. Maybe not teaching people to fly in one, because they are quite complex aeroplanes, lots of levers and things. And if you think I'm stupid, you should see some of my students. No, I don't mean that. I'm just joking. Disclaimer. Turn some of the lighting on in the cockpit here, as it's getting a little bit dark, and this is obviously one of the things that I always forget to showcase in these aeroplanes when I show them off. Look at that external model, absolutely stunning. Would you expect anything else from Carenado? They do a superb job with the look of these airplanes. Something I love about this thing, those little static wicks you can see wobbling around in the airflow, that's just what they do in real life, which I think is really, really cool. Not actually seen that on any other add-on aircraft in the sim, so really something that people should get around to modelling, I think, because it looks really cool. See that big heated panel in the windscreen there, getting a little bit in the way of the runway. I know a lot of people think, well, you know, what's that weird thing on the windscreen? It's actually a piece of expensive heated glass to keep ice off the windscreen. The rest of it is just plastic, as it is in most light aircraft. Speaking of animations, something that I think that this airplane would really benefit from is some animated de-icing boots. We've seen those on a few aircraft now, on the 310 and 44. So, chop chop, Carenado, crack on. See me trying to do a stable approach here, and obviously not having a hugely successful time of it, but skill issue, not anything to do with the airplane. Still flies lovely and stable. When this first came out, I was really impressed. It was really nice to have a big twin with the same sort of handling and inertia that the Just Flight Arrows and Warriors and stuff had at the time. So made a really welcome addition to my hangar. Obviously now we've got other even more in-depth piston twins in the sim. We've kind of taken its crown a little bit, but they are a lot more expensive than this thing. So I think for its price point, it still sits very, very well in the Microsoft Flight Simulator add-on marketplace. I think if you're looking for a piston twin and you don't want to spend a huge amount of money, I think this is probably your #1 choice. Will I get it on the centre line? Place your bets. I'm getting there. Oh, not bad. Not bad at all. Right, let's go for the engine failure, because the big failing of this thing when I first reviewed it is the fact that the single engine performance was just not there. This is quite a good performer on one engine in real life. It's well renowned as quite a safe aircraft as long as you do the right stuff. Like I said, it's complex, but it does climb reasonably well on one engine. Now, the first iteration that I tested in the sim wouldn't climb at all on one engine, which obviously isn't correct. I still recommended the aircraft at the end of the flight because I said, well, you know, the majority of you aren't going to be doing asymmetric drills and things like that. The majority of you are going to be probably flying around A to B, just visiting different places in the simulator, and for that, it's spot on. There we go. There's the engine failure. And hey, check that out, it's still climbing. Now Now this is another aeroplane that I wasn't able to get to feather properly, so it does actually. Oh, actually, hang on. Am I lying? Is it going to feather? Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. It's still kind of. Oh no, there we go. It has actually feathered. There we go. Look. So we've got a feathered prop on this aeroplane. Again, not the fault of the aircraft. It's my control bindings and stuff. So you can see we're getting about 200, 300, 400 feet per minute rate of climb out of it on one engine, which is a big improvement from what it had when I reviewed it, where it just wouldn't climb. In fact, it just descended. You were on a slow descent all the way to the ground when the aeroplane first came out. So huge thumbs up to Carenado for sorting that one out. Don't know if it's something that they did or if the aerodynamics changing the sim just allowed for the single engine performance to actually work how it should do all of a sudden. But either way, thumbs up. I can recommend this aeroplane even more than I did previously. And of course you can see there we've got the 750 integrated in there, which was around when this aeroplane first came out, but of course the 750 keeps improving all the time. Now we're coming around here for an asymmetric approach. I'm flying a kind of a curvy banana approach, continuous turn to final, taking the gear when we want to start descending, keeping the power set pretty much the same. You can see we're pretty much through the red line there, burning the turbo out, but never mind. I'm sure our virtual maintenance department will sort that out for us. Dealing with the new turbulence and the bumps and stuff very well. The handling still nice and smooth. Even on one engine, able to keep control of the aeroplane quite well. 4 white lights, but as I mentioned previously, when you're asymmetric, that's not a bad thing. Take a little bit of extra speed down. See how we go. Going to commit at about 300 feet, so you should hear the flaps come in. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe I've already got the flaps in. Can't remember. Pulling the power back now because we are quite fast. Dealing with the associated yaw with some rudder inputs. Oh, there we go. Not bad at all. So yeah, there we go. Carenado Seneca, still very much recommended. Okay, so here's another massively popular airplane in Microsoft Flight Simulator. I feel a lot of people are buying this thing because either they are doing their PPL at the moment, or they've done their PPL, or they own one of these in real life. So there's a lot of real pilots going out and buying this thing because they want the full experience of flying what they're used to in real life in the sim. Now, when this first came out, this was absolutely spot on. There was nothing really that I disliked about this aeroplane. And it's still kind of the case. Now, it's the same with all three of the Just Flight PA-28 family. They've all kind of suffered a little bit from the aerodynamics changes in the simulator. Now, apparently the devs have come out and said they are, changing, improving bugs and this, that, and the other, but they aren't going to touch anything fundamentally with the aerodynamics until the sim enters a more stable state. So, as a result, the handling of these airplanes is not what it used to be. Now, the arrows, the turbo arrow and the arrow that we had a look at a little bit earlier in this video, they still perform like they should do. This one, not so much. So you can see now the airplane is doing almost 2,000 feet per minute in a VY climb. That is absolutely bonkers. It's pants on head, for want of a better phrase. It's way over the top of what a PA-28, certainly a 161 is able to do. I've never flown a 235. Is that the Dakota, the 235, I think? But I don't think even a Dakota would be able to pull something like that off. This thing is an absolute rocket ship, and given that I've flown one of these, well, I did my PPL in one of these for a start. I've also flown them for about 250 hours or so. I know reasonably well what kind of performance these things should be pulling out, and it certainly isn't 2,000 feet per minute in the climb. Add on top of that it's also got the funny oscillating nodding dog syndrome that the arrows have got as well, so it doesn't really feel as nice as it used to feel. Yeah, it's definitely taken a bit of a hit. Now, it still looks amazing. It still sounds beautiful. It sounds spot on. All sorts of various different things about this airplane are fantastic. It's a very in-depth simulation of the real aircraft's electrical system. The lights look really cool. Like, all of these other different things are all still present and correct. But if you want something that handles and performs exactly like the real PA-28, which is how it used to be, then unfortunately this is no longer really able to provide that for you. Now, just like the other Just Flight airplanes, I'm going to come out and say I'm pretty sure they're going to fix it. They are a really good company. This is not just me coming out and saying that because they tend to give us stuff for free. They are genuinely a really good company. They're a big company. They've got a lot of developers and modelers working for them, and they've got a lot of projects out there. So it's certainly reasonable to expect that they're going to allow the older products to take a bit of a backseat while they work on newer stuff, and then maybe come back to them at a later date when the aerodynamics model of the simulator is in a more stable state, which I think we're getting there now. I don't think there's going to be any more, really huge aerodynamics and physics changes over the coming updates, but I mean, we'll see. But I think we're probably getting close to the time where Just Flight are probably going to hit the flight models of these aeroplanes and get them sorted again for the new state of the sim. But if you're going out there, if you're a PPL student or if you're a PPL and you fly your PA-28 all the time and you want to practice your procedures and stuff, I mean, you're still able to do that in this airplane, but just don't expect it to be accurate in terms of the performance you'd be expecting from one of these aeroplanes, which is sad, but kind of understandable. I'm sure it'll be back to its best before too long. See what kind of approach I can pull off in this thing. Just like the arrows, the crosswind handling is a bit weird as well. You can see I'm struggling to keep it stable. The nose is kind of wobbling all over the place. And if you go back and watch my Arrow and PA-28 reviews from however long ago it was, I can't even remember, a long time ago, you can see that I was flying them much more smoothly than this. So it's not just skill issue in this case, it is the aeroplane not quite doing what it's supposed to do. Still looking great and sounding great though. Honestly, I don't think anybody does instrument panels like Just Flight do. They do an incredible job of modelling these instrument panels. Still loads of fantastic features on this aeroplane. I'm sure once it gets updated, it'll be back to being one of the best piston singles in the game. Ooh. There we go. So it's still got that PA-28 float. So yes, buyer beware in the case of the Just Flight PA-28. Okay, so here's an aeroplane that I didn't review all that long ago, and in fact I had my much more knowledgeable friend Nathan with me when we did this. It is the Milviz, or Blackbird, or whatever they're called, Cessna 310R. Now, this is, or was at the time, a whole new level of accuracy and in-depth modelling, and surprise, surprise, it still is. You can see me here doing a crosswind takeoff. Those sounds are so good. Handling quite nicely with the crosswind. And we're off. Now, as you can see, it's a little more twitchy than perhaps some aeroplanes might be in this kind of situation. You see that weird thing with the taxi light. When the gear goes up, the taxi light tries to kind of turn itself off. Apparently that's not something that the real aeroplane does. Maybe they should take that away. Obviously I've got a switch for it on my honeycomb, so it doesn't allow it to do it, hence why I get that weird little bug where it keeps clicking back and forth. Anyway, yes, the 310, this is still a brilliant aeroplane. Its performance is spot on the numbers. It's got great systems. It's got all sorts of incredible depth with all the different maintenance functions and failure functions. It's even got a function that allows you to clean the aeroplane. It is one of the best aeroplanes I've ever seen for any flight simulator, and Sim Update 10 certainly hasn't changed that. Now, we'll see a little bit later on the asymmetric stuff that I was doing, but it's a little more tricky than perhaps it was when I first reviewed it. But look at that! I love this aeroplane. I love the way it looks. The lights are brilliant as well. Look at that. Now, there's a couple things that said that I'm not enormously impressed with on this aeroplane. They are only a couple. The first is the handling of the aeroplane in terms of the pitch of it is a little bit kind of overly sensitive. Now, Nathan did say when we reviewed this aeroplane that the real 310 is pretty responsive in pitch, but there just doesn't seem to be any inertia there when you're kind of applying pitch to the aeroplane. It just seems to be digital. It just appears instantly, which is not quite as good as some other add-on aeroplanes from Microsoft Flight Sim. Certainly the #1 aeroplane in Microsoft Flight Sim right now for handling, which we're going to be looking at in a few minutes. But that said, it's certainly not a bad handling aeroplane. You could just do with a few little tweaks. And apparently there's a big update coming soon, which is going to address all that kind of stuff, so I can't wait to see that and try it out. Maybe do a short re-review video, get Nathan back along, and see what's changed on that. And see, I'm just finding a circuit is on cast now. This colour scheme, by the way, is a Flightsim.to special. I really like this black and red and white striped scheme. So if you've got the 310, you're thinking, oh, why don't I have that colour scheme? It's just a download of the internet, completely free. And I'd recommend you go and check out Flightsim.to because they've got loads and loads of these really great colour schemes made by members of the community. Now, the other thing that I'm not enormously on board with is the way the sounds on this airplane work. So the pitch of the engines really doesn't seem to change all that much with throttle position. It seems to be just completely tied to the RPM. Now, obviously, in the real airplane, or in any airplane that's got a constant speed propeller, the pitch of the engine is very largely tied to the RPM and not so much the throttle. But there is definitely a change in sound when you are changing throttle application. It just doesn't so much change the pitch. That is the tone of the engine's noise. Now, that's not quite something that's present in this aeroplane, which is a little bit strange. I think they do need to work on that a little bit. But the actual sounds themselves are amazing, and they've definitely been taken from a real aeroplane, so really can't complain with that. So you can see I'm kind of wobbling around a bit, but for the most part, keeping it about on the money. Lovely big freeze there, thanks Microsoft Flight Sim. Like I said, this was mostly an NVIDIA driver thing. Now where the new updates dropped and the drivers, a lot of that stuttering has gone away. Let's see what kind of cross-wind landing I do here. Hey, not too bad. And then another massive freeze. Hey, get it lined up. And we'll get the flaps away, pointed in the right direction, make sure everything's all set up, and advance the power and go again. There's the power coming in. Lovely long runway, so we can take our time with that. Bit of controls into wind. We almost stall it a few times. Yeah, why not? But again, that's kind of overly sensitive pitch. That's not really helping matters there when I'm trying to pull it off the runway. It's nice and heavy to get it off the runway, which you'd expect. But once you actually get it off there, it's just a little bit too sensitive. Now we're going to go for an engine failure. See how we work with this. Now this is another one of those aeroplanes that was experiencing that bug with my control bindings. So I tried to pull back the prop to feather it, which you'll see in a second, and it just doesn't feather, which is annoying. I know that it definitely does work properly, though. I got one of my friends on Discord to check it out, and he said it's absolutely fine. Apparently this aeroplane does use the new Microsoft Flight Simulator propeller physics model, so that fancy thing that they first trialled out on the default King Air. Not all of the in-depth twin aircraft add-ons actually use that yet. You can see me struggling with that and trying to make it feather, still having no luck. But again, not the airplane's fault. This is a bit of a Microsoft bug, I guess, and a bit of a bug with how the honeycomb works. It has since been fixed, so no need to worry about this. You can see that the aircraft's still performing as if the propeller was properly feathered. So, as far as you're concerned, it's still working correctly. It's just that you aren't getting that nice animation of the engine screeching to a stop. Something that Asobo probably need to sort out in the future is obviously piston engines have quite a lot more resistance to rotating than turbine engines do on turboprops. So when the engine stops, they kind of judder to a halt a lot more readily than a turboprop does. Certainly a free power turbine turboprop. It's like a PT6 engine like the King Air. Looking out over that wingtip fuel tank back at the airport. Doing some securing checks now, so getting the fuel pump off on the affected engine, get the mags off on the affected engine. We also turn the tank off and the alternator. I'm trying to get it, but I think it's to do the honeycomb binding. There we go. I had to turn them both off on the honeycomb and then re-turn the right one back on again. A bit awkward. Round we go, keeping it nice and tight, flying over the top of Finningley Village here. Damn the noise complaints. There's the gear coming down. Electric landing gear, of course, on the 310, so it makes quite a large noise. Big electric motor winding a big jack screw. Bunch of big jack screws. Quite a sporty turn here for an asymmetric approach. Probably wouldn't be going this aggressive in real life, but keeping the speed nice and high to compensate. So not in any kind of danger, really. And down we go. Struggling a little bit with that crosswind. Maybe he's still, it's just lacking a little bit of that inertia. But other than that, still an absolutely fantastic airplane and definitely a recommended buy. And finally, we come to the end and, well, finish where we started, I guess, with the Flysimware Cessna 414 Alpha Whiskey, or in other words, in my opinion, the best aeroplane in Microsoft Flight Simulator right now. You can see we've got another lovely flightsim.to colour scheme on this thing. I used one of the default colour schemes when we reviewed it, but I do like the add-on ones that you can get for free off of the internet, because there's a few like nice glossy clean schemes which I do like the look of this aeroplane in a nice shiny look. Not that there's anything wrong with the default ones. Now this aeroplane is updated constantly. I had to join the Discord of the chief dev, Momo, because he updates it so often. There's no other way to keep abreast with all the changes that's going on this thing. It really is a labour of love for the Flysimware team. They've developed this from a real life aeroplane, and you can really tell. I mean, this is the sounds are incredible. The depth of the systems is brilliant, although it doesn't have quite as good a maintenance system as the 310 certainly, and the circuit breakers don't work, and there's a few things, but they are coming, believe it or not. They are going to be introduced at a later date, but pretty much every month or 2 months an update comes out, often 2 or 3 times a month. An update comes out that changes this thing, makes it fundamentally better in some way or another. I know that there's an update coming soon to add all new external lights to this aeroplane. It is brilliant. I love the attitude of the developers of this thing, and the fact that it's a really good product on top of that. It's just the cherry on the cake, really. Got some lovely sounds there as we wind those big 6-cylinder engines up. It does help that I find this aeroplane in real life a really, really cool thing, and I'd love to have a go in one. Get up to our rotation speed. Obviously, you see just how smooth it is and just how much nice inertia it's got. It's such a pleasure to fly. We're just going to have a quick fly around the airfield just to show that this aeroplane is just as good now as it was when I reviewed it. That said, yeah, I didn't review it that long ago, but it just keeps getting better. And at some point, I am going to be doing a little cross-country flight like I did in the Seneca a while back, just to showcase a little bit of IFR flying technique, and also show a few of the updates and changes to this aeroplane that have come over the past couple of months or so since I reviewed this. Yeah, still looks amazing, still sounds amazing, but I think the biggest draw of this aeroplane is just how great the flight model is. It's got some real weight and inertia to it. It just feels so, so good. So whatever Flysimware did, I think everybody else should be doing. Pop the yaw damper off there as we're coming in. It's not just that though. I mean, the engine modelling is absolutely fantastic. They've got a great pressurization system which works perfectly. Just little details like, you know, open the window in flight, you depressurize, all that kind of stuff. It just shows just how much love and care and attention has gone into this thing, and that's something I really, really respect in a developer. What I don't respect is my inability to maintain the centre line, or to turn onto the centre line, which is extremely poor in this case. Left myself a very, very short final there, which obviously is a little bit stupid. Should have come out a little bit further. It's the radar altimeter going off. I should have wound that bug to 0 to shut it up, but I didn't, for reasons unknown. Just coming into the flare now, weight and inertia of the aeroplane, just carrying it down. Really, a little bit too much speed and jerked up the yoke a little bit too much there, but a little bit of a long landing. It's no reflection on the aeroplane, and more of a reflection on my lack of skill. Bit of control into wind, still got a bit of crosswind, but like I said, different conditions on each of these videos as I filmed them over a number of days. Kind of had to go out and have a bit of a play around with them and see if they still felt right, see if they still performed right. It goes without saying that obviously the performance on this aeroplane is absolutely spot on, both on single engine and both engines. Speaking of single engine, we're about to experience a remarkably predictable engine failure. You can notice I've been knocking out the left-hand engine each time here when I do these asymmetric bits. Now for the Seneca that doesn't really matter because it's a counter-turning airplane. It doesn't for the Seminole either, because I believe that counter-turns too. But for aircraft like the 4-4, there we go, and the 310, both of their engines turn in a clockwise direction as viewed from the pilot's seat. So the left-hand engine is therefore the critical engine, so that's the one that has the biggest effect upon failing. As you can see, the aeroplane's still perfectly under control here. We're still getting a decent rate of climb with an unfeathered prop. We're going to feather the prop now. You can hear that thing running down. And in a second we'll see it running down, because this is one of the aeroplanes that was unaffected by that bug. It does take a while longer to run down than you'd normally expect, but there you go, nice abrupt grinding to a halt. That's exactly what you'd expect. See it just kind of flapping around in the airflow, looking every bit just like a real failed engine in flight. How do you know? Well, believe it or not, we regularly shut down engines in flight on purpose as part of multi-engine training. Obviously when we're at a safe altitude and in a safe area. But we do it just to give students the experience of flying an airplane on one engine for real, and also to experience the engine restart procedures. See, there I am trying to do the engine securing checks, close the cowl flaps on the affected side, turn the fuel on, alternator off, fuel pump off, all on the affected side obviously. looks all lovely and smooth and very under control. I've got the aeroplane up a little bit higher than a standard circuit just to give us a little extra insurance. Here we are coming round. I really cannot praise this aeroplane enough, and you're probably sick to the back teeth of me saying it, but it is really #1 in Microsoft Flight Simulator right now. Certainly when it comes to light aircraft, GA aircraft. I'm sure some of you out there are saying, no, the PFTG whatever is great, but I'm not an airliner enjoyer, shall we say. So this really for me is as good as it gets. And we go, coming into the flare. Let's see what I can do on one engine. And a bit of crosswind to deal with as well, just for added lols. Whee, not my best effort, but we're in one piece. So there you have it, the Cessna 414. Still absolutely brilliant and still absolutely a recommended buy. So there you have it, a little quick re-review video of a bunch of my most popular review aeroplanes in the simulator. Just finishing off with one last little look at the Cessna 414, because those new lights that I briefly mentioned in the video have now dropped, so you can see we've got some new lighting effect. This is one of the few things that I didn't quite like about the 414 for a while. The strobes were very, very dim, but now we've got a new effect. You can see even in the bright sunshine here at Princess Juliana International, they are nice and bright, shining, and even kind of reflecting onto the ground a little bit. So yeah, approve of it. Very, very nice. The reflections from the brilliantly bright taxi light there are very, very good as well. So enjoy that, love it. Just another great improvement to, like I said, what I believe is probably the best GA aeroplane in the simulator right now. Now, obviously, you may disagree with me on any of these things. If you want to go back and have a look at any of the other aeroplanes we reviewed at any point in the channel, just give me a shout and let me know. One of the ones that I was going to go back and have a look at again for this video was the Cessna 337. I did get some footage of that aeroplane, but the footage was all corrupted and the aspect ratio was wrong for some weird reason, so I haven't got any of the 337. Suffice to say, it's still as good as when I reviewed it the first time. There's nothing really bad going on with that aircraft. It's still a good aeroplane, very, very solid for the price point. So I shall call it a day there, but as I said, if you want any further info on any other aircraft that we've reviewed on this channel, just let me know. If you enjoyed the video, if you enjoy any of our videos, please consider giving a like, subscribing to the channel, all that kind of stuff does really help us out. And I'll see you next time. Thanks, bye-bye.